Good evening and welcome to the ALD Connect webinar on travel considerations for ALD and AMN patients. My name is Kathleen O'Sullivan-Fortin. I'm honored to be here tonight as a moderator. I'm going to weigh in with my own 2 cents later on, but we have a fabulous group of experts with lots to share. Before we begin, I just wanted to quick read a disclaimer. This webinar is for informational purposes only. The discussion is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you or a family member are ill or suspect that you and a family member are ill, please seek professional medical attention immediately. ALD Connect does not recommend or endorse any specific physicians, treatments, procedures, or products. And in this case, websites, airlines, hotels, etc., anything to do with travel. These are just sharing our experiences and our knowledge and tips and tricks, but also please know there's no endorsement to ALD Connect or from ALD Connect, whatever the case may be. So even if they're mentioned on this evening's webinar, really, the best patient is an informed patient. So that's all we're trying to do. Again, I'm Kathleen O'Sullivan-Fortin. I'm one of the founding board members of ALD Connect, and I am just honored to be part of this rockstar panel. We're going to introduce people as we go, but know that we are going to be sharing experiences both from the author of the wheelchair travel guide, and in addition to patients and family members of all parts of the ALD spectrum. So we've got men with AMN, women with ALD, affected children, and also hints for folks who are just adrenally insufficient. So I'm going to begin by introducing Katy Ehnstrom, who really is the inspiration for this entire evening's presentation. Katy, thank you so much for being willing to come and speak with us, and I will leave it to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kathleen. I'm so happy to be a part of this webinar. This is my first experience with ALD Connect, and it's been great so far. I'm here to share the wheelchair travel guide that I made as part of my physical therapy degree. I just graduated from Boston University's physical therapy doctoral program. And yeah, I'm excited to share it with you all. So let me share my screen. All right, and I will make this full screen. Awesome. So this is the wheelchair travel guide. I'm planning to just sort of walk through some of the main components of it and share with you all sort of how to use it, and etc. So it's a PDF format, about 30 pages, and this is the table of contents. And within the table of contents, you can click on any of these links here, and it'll take you to whichever page the title is referring to. So we'll just sort of go through and hit on some major points. So at a glance, the purpose of this guide is to give all-encompassing information on how to air travel with a wheelchair. The reason I chose air travel is because it is the least accessible form of transportation for wheelchair users, based on a few barriers that I'll go through in a minute. But the aim of this guide was to just sort of empower people with the information that they need to sort of increase their participation in travel and society, decrease fears, all of that stuff. So some of the common barriers, I'd say one of the big ones is that air travel is the only type of transportation mode that requires people to transfer out of their own personal mobility devices and into the airline seat. a lot of trains, buses allow you to stay within your own personal mobility device. So that's a big reason for why the air travel environment causes a lot of issues. Additionally, for people who are trying to travel outside of the country, there is a lack of global standardization. So meaning America has certain rules and regulations, and other countries may have different rules and regulations, so it makes it a little bit confusing. Additionally, there is an issue with inaccessible bathrooms. There are ways to sort of work around that, but that's another barrier for wheelchair users. And I think probably one of the biggest ones is fear of wheelchair damage, which is totally understandable because it is how someone interacts with their world and how they move around. So it's a very valid fear. However, there are ways to decrease risk for damage. There are ways to overcome these barriers. So if you keep reading, then that's the goal, to overcome these barriers. I have some information here about future policy changes to look out for, including more accessible bathrooms and the possibility to remain seated in your personal wheelchair on board the plane. That one specifically is definitely in the earlier phases of its engineering, but they did do some experiments and assessments, and it is possible. It's just that there's going to be a lot of modifications that need to be done in order to get to that point. So it's going to take a while, which is unfortunate, but something to look out for in the future. These are the Bill of Rights for people traveling with disabilities. It's always important to know your rights, stay empowered. And then this is sort of the bulk of the guide, how to travel by plane. We've got booking info. So when you're booking online, it's really important to select the box for assistance when you're booking. That allows the airline to have, some notification in advance. In addition, people do recommend calling your airline to arrange for certain accommodations, just making sure all your bases are covered. Airlines use this thing called an SSR, Special Service Request Code, to sort of track what assistance you need. So it's beneficial to know which sort of codes you need before calling. And then let me just pause and say, I know this is a lot of information, which is why it's all nicely encompassed in this guide. For anyone to refer back to, no one is going to have this all memorized, and traveling is stressful, like baseline. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, a lot more planning, but hopefully this will give you all the information you need in one place so that you don't have to spend like hours researching for different information. So I won't go through everything just because it's all in the guide, but I just wanted to go through some of the main things. So for additionally, something that you should think about before flying is how your wheelchair is going to be stored. And this is sort of a flow sheet that takes you through where it will be stored, meaning under the plane in the cargo compartment, or like in the air cabin itself. But that's only if it's a manual wheelchair, which I think is a little bit more rare in this population, if I'm correct. And yeah, so that just goes into some storage information. This is an example of how there are links embedded within the PDF. So I won't click on it now because I don't want it to kick me out, but throughout the PDF, there are things that you can click on and it'll take you to whatever website this is referring to, which is helpful because you don't have to go searching for something else on Google. Another thing to keep in mind, any wheelchair or wheelchair parts will be stored free of cost, and it won't it won't count as a part of your baggage limit, so no worries about that. One of the ways to decrease wheelchair damage, which I know is a big fear for a lot of people, is to have like a form attached to your wheelchair. And some airlines have pre-existing forms that say, basically strategies and recommendations for ways to store, transport your wheelchair. So again, you can click on all of these different links and it'll take you right there. Getting through TSA, there is a pat down if you're unable to stand. It will be of an officer of the same gender, and you can request for it to be in a private room. And then something to keep in mind, if you do have the financial means, TSA PreCheck and global entry passes eliminate the physical pat down if that's something that you would rather avoid. So that's just something to keep in mind. And there are also ways for people to assist you through the TSA process. And you can, again, click on this link to fill that out online or call this number. This talks you through the boarding process. So biggest thing here is you get to pre-board the airplane before all other passengers, including elite level passengers, VIP, everyone. And if that's something that does not happen, then you can definitely report that to both the Department of Transportation and the airline itself. And I'll go through the ways in which you can do that. And then it just sort of talks about the process of transferring into the aisle chair and then into the airline seat. Something to think about when choosing a seat is, and also when calling ahead, is asking about removable armrests. Aircrafts with more than 30 passengers, which are most planes, are required to have a certain amount of movable armrests in the aisle seats. So that's definitely something to keep in mind because it makes transfers a lot easier. Some information about using the bathroom on the plane. Deplaning. So I read a couple of articles or blogs that recommended staying in the airplane seat until everyone else gets on or gets off, so that it leaves enough time for the people to get your wheelchair and bring it to the jet bridge, so that you don't have to be sitting in the aisle chair, because people have said that the aisle wheelchair is kind of uncomfortable, and in the airplane seat, it's a little more comfortable, and you can also be sitting on your seat cushion from your own wheelchair so that it's more comfortable. And then this takes you through some of the ways to decrease the risk of damage of wheelchairs. So different bullet points there. A big thing is taking off any removable parts and keeping them with you, just so you can protect and keep the things close as much as possible. And then I already talked through the wheelchair handling form. All right, so if something does happen to go wrong, which, human error, it's possible, this talks you through how to file a complaint. And a lot of the things that I read were, it's important to keep airlines accountable, because if they're not held accountable, then nothing's ever going to change. So I know it takes sort of more effort to report and file a complaint, and everyone has so much going on, which is so understandable. But yeah, just keeping that in mind, that we want to hold them accountable, definitely. So you can follow that link there. And then again, in the unfortunate event of wheelchair damage, this takes you through the steps on what to do. And then separate from air travel, I have some additional resources, including how to book accessible hotels, accessible places to go, things to do. This one, Wheel the World, I thought was really cool because you can create a personalized profile with all your accessibility needs, and it compares it to the hotel's information and presents you with sort of like a match number, partial, adequate, outstanding match. So I thought that was pretty cool. Wheelchairtravel.org is a great accessible travel blog that I found very helpful in writing this guide. Another travel blog there. And then I'm not sure if anyone here is a part of this Facebook group, but it just sort of gets you connected with people who have the same questions as you and who can share experiences. There's a hotline, although it's not open 24 hours, 24/7. It's there if you have like an urgent question or something that this guide doesn't cover. European Union, so thinking about if you wanted to travel to the EU. And then the perfect lift was something that I think it was Curb Free with Corey Lee recommended, that it's just something that helps with transfers if that's something that is in the financial means for people. And then I've got my references here. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I'll go back to the front and yeah, I think I'll be done here and let the next panelists continue.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Katie. And I just want everyone to know that this is available on the ALD Connect website, and from Katie's generosity. This really is such a wonderful resource, and especially with all the hyperlinks and links, it certainly is enough to get you hopefully excited to travel, even if it's been a while, and also to know that there are better and easier ways to do it. So along those lines, I wanted to hand it over to Laurie, who has done some recent traveling, and to see if how do her experiences line up with Katie's resource. So Laurie, take it away.
Hey, I'm Laurie Hayes. I'm 54, and I was diagnosed with ALD when I was 21. I started some symptoms when I was around 40, and they progressively got worse. About 6 years ago, I had to start to use a walking cane, and the progression was fairly quickly from the cane to a wheelchair, from forearm canes to a walker, and then to the wheelchair that I used initially as needed. Now I'm about 95% in a wheelchair. And I really let it get the best of me. I was afraid to travel. I would not even entertain the idea of travel because I was so anxious with regard to what would happen in the airport, what would happen on the plane. I just thought about so many things that could go wrong, and I missed out on a lot. My family and I were invited to a wedding in Ireland, and I was too afraid to fly. And my family went and had a fabulous time, and I was at home. So it was tough. In 2020, my daughter decided to go to Notre Dame for grad school. It was an amazing experience, but it was time to get real. And it was get on an airplane or not see her. So the first time that we traveled out to South Bend, we drove. And believe me, there is nothing that will get you on an airplane quicker than a 15-hour road trip. So we did the road trip once, and then I decided it was time to put my big girl pants on and get on the plane. And it was awful. I had myself so worked up, thought of every worst case scenario. And I got to the airport, and yeah, it was a whole lot different than it had been traveling in the past, but it wasn't awful. And there were so many people in the airport who wanted to help. I don't think I went 50 feet without an offer of assistance. I was with my husband. I did use my own chair in the airport. If you use an airport wheelchair, an attendant needs to stay with you the entire time in the airport. I did use my own chair. I have brought both a foldable chair and a chair that's not foldable. I have used it right to the airplane and gate checked it, and it was smooth sailing. I was the first person on the plane, transitioned once I had to use an aisle chair. That was a different experience, and I was extremely uncomfortable. I was the only person on the plane besides the crew. Nobody else saw me getting onto the aisle chair, getting off of it. There was no need to suffer any embarrassment, or it was a smooth transition. When it was time to deplane, I was the last person off. And every time except one, my chair was waiting for me. The only time that it was not, the crew had me stay in my seat until my chair was at the door of the plane. So it was very, very easy. But if I have a huge message, it's nothing like what you've built it up to be in your head. And even if you think about the worst case scenario, so what if that happens? What are you going to do? You can get over it. It's so you slip when you're trying to transition. There are enough people who are there to help you. That's their job. They're not making any kind of judgment. All they're doing is making sure that you're safe. So there were silly things that prevented me from flying. That was one of them. And that's where I got to the point where I thought, so what if that does happen? I'm still going to make it to South Bend. Maybe I will, be a little bit bruised up. My ego will be, but so what? I still, in the end, get to where I want to go. So, and I think talking about the road trip, I think that a baby step to air travel is a road trip, not necessarily a 15-hour one. However, a shorter one, and you have so much more control over your own self, your environment while you're traveling. You can stop when you need to. I have also plotted out the rest stops along the way to places that I have gone to, and you can, like anything else, Google it and get on the I-95 website and figure out how far apart rest stops are. So many things that you can do. You have your go bag packed so you're not digging through your suitcase for things that you might need. And then when it's time for air travel, plan ahead. That is, as anybody would do, plan ahead, but there are different things to keep in mind when you're using the chair. And I would say that the thing that I do all the time is I have my friends and family constantly on the lookout for accessibility, no matter where they go. And what are the hotels like? What is the public transportation system like? How easy it is to get a taxi, because to use an Uber with a wheelchair that's not foldable means that you need an Uber XL, and they're super expensive. So there are accessible taxis, but not as available as a regular taxi. So look ahead to figure out how long that might take to get one and what particular phone number to call for that. With regard to the topography of whatever area you're going to, Kathleen had a fabulous suggestion, and that was to, Google for street views. I always have my family looking out. Are there cobblestones? What are the sidewalks like? Are there tons of, potholes? How do all of the curbs have the, ADA accessibility? Just what's it like to get around a city? With regard to hotels, I think for me, and I found out the hard way, I always thought an ADA room was an ADA room for mobility. And I found out the hard way that an ADA room does not mean a roll-in shower. So if you're unable to get out of your chair to use the shower, anything with any kind of lip is obviously not going to work out. So it's extremely important to clarify the shower situation. I will say I've also recently found myself in wanting to go someplace in an ADA room was not available. I spoke to the front desk. I am able to, not ideally, but I am able to transition to a toilet without a rail. What my main concern I know, Kathleen, I saw that look. I don't do that, but what I have had them do is to measure the doors to see what the width of the doors is. And then I was concerned about the width between a bed and a bathroom door, and they measured that for me as well to make sure that I was still able to get into the bathroom. So hotels are more than willing to do things when you ask and explain the situation. That's at least been my experience. So I think that there are a lot of things that you can do ahead of time for yourself to try to minimize problems when you're there, and to hopefully alleviate some anxiety for yourself when when you get there. There are tons of resources that are available. I have a few here. I will say, now that I have gotten over my fear of flying, all I want to do is travel. I am so sorry that I let my fears prevent me from doing so much. And really, so many of them, now that I have traveled, were so unfounded, but they were so real to me in the moment. But with regard to these resources, I will say in particular, I am utilizing Iceland United because I'm planning a trip to Iceland next year, and they have planned everything for me except for my flight. They provide the transfers. They can provide group tours or private tours, whichever you prefer. They booked the hotels for me. I know Katie had specifically referenced Wheel the World. And I have also used that. I am going to Las Vegas in October for a Patriots game. And Wheel the World had a bunch of activities in Las Vegas, in particular, zip lining that's accessible. So that was really something else. So you don't know what these resources will provide you with. Now, I don't have an excuse not to zip line, unfortunately, because I never have before. Now I'm like, well, what the heck? I got over fear of flying. Zip lining is next. So, stage traveling is absolutely wonderful. It's mostly group vacations that they book, but you can do private tours as well. And the first one, Wonders Within Reach, is accessible family vacations, but I get this woman's emails, I get her emails constantly. And even though she might be, talking about a family vacation someplace in Florida, there are still tons of tips for getting beach wheelchairs. And so it's very resourceful, even if you're not bringing a family along. So I guess my main point would be, please don't let your fear or anxiety prevent you from doing what you want to do and going where you want to go. And there are so many people and so many resources available. And don't start small. It doesn't have to be big, but just get out there. And if you're only using a cane or forearm crutches, or don't stop, keep going. Don't do what I did, because it's harder to restart than it is to keep going and take each step as it comes. So, but I'm having fun now, and I hope everybody else is or will be soon. Thanks, guys.
I love it. Thank you so much, Laurie. And thank you for doing all the hard work of finding those resources. I'm now going to pass it along to Elissa, because she is someone who family trips have not stopped despite, the hardships of ALD. So I wanted to get a different, fresh perspective on this. And Elissa, take it away.
Okay, hi everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, perfect. I was traveling for work today and I'm in a Panera parking lot, so I just want to make sure we're good. So I'm very honored to join this group. I think it's a lot of really great perspectives, and the perspective I bring is that of the mom, the caregiver. So I have a son, his name is Dylan. He is 12 years old. And when he was 9, he was diagnosed with ALD and Addison's disease. Prior to that, he was completely normal. We lived a very normal life. We did lots and lots and lots of traveling. And when we got his diagnosis, we, as a family, decided that our family motto is slow and steady wins the race. And ALD won't stop me, are big things that we talk about. So, sorry, I'm getting emotional. I agree with everything that Laurie said, just in terms of not letting this stop you, because we were going to be darned if it stopped us. And so it was very important to us that we kept going with everything. So let me get to my slides so I can compose myself. I'm going to share my screen. I just created a few slides to keep myself on task. Okay. Okay. So as I mentioned, Dylan, as you all know, has Addison's disease on top of ALD, and he is total care. So he went from running around playing soccer to, we are now 3 years into this. He's wheelchair bound, G-tube fed, nonverbal. He does have an AAC device that he uses to communicate with us. And he is cognitively all there. He's just basically kind of trapped in his own little body. So it was just really important to us, especially with his cognitive awareness, that we keep going. And so, like I said, our family motto is slow and steady wins the race. And I think one of the biggest things and tips that I have from a caregiver perspective with a young child, and we have 2 other boys also, and neither of them, thank God, have ALD. I do not have it. His was de novo. So I'm very well aware that it could have been all 3 of them. And so that's, I think, why we so fiercely embrace the time that we've been given. So mindset is a big one, and I'll talk about each of these. Laurie said this, but I'll reiterate it: baby steps. You do not have to start with a plane trip to Iceland. Start with going to visit family, go to the wedding, go to the party, go to the ball game, whatever, but just go and take baby steps to do it. Go to the mall. Just start small if you're afraid, and you'll see as you start to do things, okay, this went well, this didn't. Okay, maybe we need to bring this next time. We don't need this next time. And you can start to kind of figure out what you need. And then from there, be prepared, make lists. I'm a list maker, lots and lots of lists to help keep yourself organized. I think you heard a lot from Laurie and with the guide that was created, that a lot of this is just planning ahead and being organized and kind of thinking about scenarios ahead of time to prevent as much as you can. And then lastly, having a contingency plan. So mindset is important because it's going to be different. As Laurie said, you know, it was different, but it wasn't terrible. And so getting over that fear and just having it in the back of your mind that slow and steady, just expect things to take longer. Again, be prepared, start small, and you can do this. I got this quote. We recently went on a family vacation to Disney World, and I thought this quote was quite fitting. The way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing. So just do it. And then I have some tips and tricks for travel as a caregiver. I think one of the things that you heard me talk about is lists, what to pack, having a comprehensive list. I have one that I just keep, and it's down to diapers, wipes, you know, our folding massage table, just all the things that we need to bring in order, you know, the suction machine, all the stuff that we need. If we're going to plan any day trips during our vacation, what does that look like? And what do we need to think about for that? Having that list ahead of time so that the day of, when we're ready to go, we can just grab what's on the list and go. If you're traveling and you're going to do a road trip, we've done those. Thinking ahead about maybe packing an overnight bag and having everything that you need for your hotel stay in a smaller bag so that you don't have to take everything into the hotel and then back out to the car, but just a smaller stuff that you would need just for that overnight stay. Little things like that. Laminating what you have it with you and refer to it. So things like seizure plans, your Addison's disease plan, your endo plan, you know, your medication list, all of those things, and making sure that you have those with you. I actually have them on like a little jump ring, and we hang them off of a carabiner on the back of Dylan's wheelchair. So they're right there if we need them. And just as an example, we recently went to Disney, and I had printed and laminated a list of rides that were wheelchair accessible versus the ones that weren't. And so it made it very easy as we approach the ride. Do we have to get out of our wheelchair for this one, or are we good to go, you know, going ahead and keeping him in the wheelchair? And it really helped a lot with my anxiety and us taking turns with our muscle of knowing whether or not we were going to have to transfer him. We did hear a lot about the flights. And I will say, we recently flew with Dylan. I had a lot of the same anxiety that Laurie talked about from the caregiver perspective for Dylan. And we had a good experience, and we had a not so good experience. And the good experience, everything went like butter, and everyone was super helpful. The not so good experience, we had to wait for his chair for an exorbitant amount of time. We were not allowed on the plane first, we were last. So there were some things that happened with one of the flights that shouldn't have. And so I will say, you heard them talk about the importance of filing a complaint. Do it, take the time. It really doesn't take that long. Just follow those links that she's got in her guide. And I wish I would have had that, because I had to go looking for them, but I went looking for them, and I filed a complaint with TSA and with the airline that we used. And they heard me, and I was compensated for what happened. And it was also taken way up the chain at the airline because they were at fault. So things like that, I think, just, you know, don't be afraid to you advocate every day for yourself, or if you're a caregiver, you advocate for your child. Why would you stop with an airline? I push the doctors around all the time. So I would say, you know, make sure you call the airline ahead of time when you're booking your flight, if you're a caregiver, and let them know that you're traveling with a medically fragile child. For us, they wanted a list of all the equipment that we were going to be bringing. So Dylan requires oxygen and suction and he has a pulse ox machine. And so they needed to know about all of those items, because there are certain forms that you will have to declare and fill out prior to the flight. So that's really important. You can also, you heard about this, ask if they can to put the wheelchair, if it's a manual like my son's, on board in the closet. Our neurologist actually told us to have a little cash ready so that if, this is terrible, but if they don't have room in the closet and they do have to put the wheelchair under, you can give a little incentive to whoever's taking your wheelchair to take care of it. You can also call ahead and make an appointment with TSA for easier check-in, and you don't have to be pre-checked to do that. And they actually want you to do that if you are in a wheelchair, because they will take you off to the side and you will actually get escorted from the moment that you check in to security, and they make the process so easy. I was so stressed out. Dylan is on 23 different medicines a day, and I had to bring all of those plus all of his emergency meds with us. And so the thought of having that gave me so much anxiety. The thought of having to go through security with that. And it really was not as big of a deal as you would think it was, because we made all of those phone calls ahead of time. Get there early and give yourself plenty of time. This is not a scenario where you want to be like, I'm trying to think of that movie where they're running late and they're running through the airport. That's not going to work in this situation. So you just want to be an early bird, be organized and get there ahead of time. And then my other tip and trick is to plan ahead and call ahead. Call ahead. And you heard Laurie talk about this too. Call ahead and ask to talk to the wheelchair accessibility personnel with the airline that you're traveling with, or the resort that you're going to, or whatever, the cruise line, whatever it is you're doing. There is someone there and that is their job. And so make sure you get in contact with them. Oftentimes there are a lot of accommodations that can be made that you may not even know about. Document every conversation that you have, specifically if you're going to fly. I think I found that was very helpful in getting my just compensation for our situation that did not go well. You heard her talk about the fact that just because it says it's wheelchair accessible doesn't mean it will work. So if you can call and talk to someone at that location about what that means, because it's not all created equal. And then the last thing I'll speak to is travel insurance. And I don't know if this was in the guide or not, but I will say we recently went on a cruise. And I would say that it's a very good idea to call ahead and find out from your insurance what they cover. Will they cover, if you go out of the country, will they cover the hospitalization? And if so, how is that reimbursed? Because for us, we had to pay out of pocket first and file for reimbursement after. So it was important that we knew that ahead of time. Also, if you have to be, like, God forbid, airlifted off of say you're going on a cruise, where are you going? And that often is not covered. So having travel insurance for that flight to get you to the whatever port is closest for the hospitalization that might need to happen, you would need to know that. So travel insurance is a great idea. Just you need to call ahead and talk to your insurance and find out and get that in writing exactly what they're going to cover and what's not covered, and then purchase the travel insurance for that gap. All right. And then when things go wrong. So I mentioned that we went on a cruise in February. We did. Dylan did not. Dylan ended up in the hospital. My husband stayed back with him. So that you have to, this goes back to mindset. And specifically with a child that's medically complex, you have to kind of know that sometimes everything's going to go off without a hitch and it's going to go like butter and you're going to have a great time. And then you're going to have those vacations where somebody's spending it in the hospital with Dylan. We've had this happen a couple of times and we have not let it stop us. We were ready. We knew which hospital we needed to go to. We had a meeting with our neurologist in the local hospital there so that they had the seizure plan and they knew, they knew the situation. We anticipated that this possibly could go wrong. And when it did, we were ready. So I think that's the key. It's okay to get bummed. We were pretty bummed about it, but we were prepared. And so there is the dark side to it. But if you're ready and you have done what you can, the rest is in God's hands and you just got to kind of roll with it. Right. So, he recovered. He's doing much better. He got a stomach bug like the night before we were supposed to leave for the cruise. ended up having a seizure and we ended up in the hospital. So he's doing great now though. And we have been on other vacations since then. We didn't, like I said, we don't let that stop us. So I'll end with start small, go to the game, go to the family, whatever, but go in spite of this heinous disease, go. And I'll finish with, if we can travel with a 15-year-old, a 4-year-old, and Dylan, you can do this too. So I hope we've inspired you to, whether it's baby steps, you do something small, or you plan a cruise, go do it and go have fun. All right. Thank you for letting me share.
I love this. Elissa, you are a total rock star. Like, there is not a person within the sound of your voice who is not impressed and thinking, for God's sake, you're traveling with a 4-year-old and a teenager and Dylan. Like, I just want to let that settle in. So I think rock on. Like, the world is not smaller because of ALD's effect on your family. And I just think it's amazing. So thank you for sharing. And I'm grateful to hear that you made the complaint and that you were like, that there was a reaction, because I think a lot of times people get mistreated and they keep it to themselves because they don't want to cause trouble and they think no one's going to care about it. But I'm glad to hear that in your case that, people cared about it and decided to do better, hopefully.
Yes. So yes, please file the complaints, because as Laurie said, if we don't, and before that, if we don't make waves, nothing's going to change. It's going to be up to us to have to make the change. And some of the things that we see coming, the idea that we could take Dylan on a plane and he could just stay in his seat, that needs to happen. And so if we have to be the ones to cause enough fuss to make that happen, so be it, but that needs to happen. That would be amazing.
Absolutely. Well, I'm going to shift gears a little and I'm going to invite Ken to share. Ken is not in a wheelchair, but has a lot of travel experience. If you ever follow Ken on any of his social media, you cannot pin him down. He is on the go. So Ken, take it away.
We're going and we're keeping those feet moving, everybody. So speaking of keeping the feet moving, I'm just going to give you a quick intro here. I'm 38. My walking progressed to kind of, slow down. I started with AFO leg braces, and then I kind of switched to a cane. And then earlier in this year, I had slipped and fell on the ice and I broke my leg. And that's when I decided to get a walker. And at that time, when I got into the walker, why did I not think of this before? With a broken leg, it made walking much easier. So it kind of got me going to the point where I was using the walker. I would take it, I would go to the store, and with AMN, ALD in general, just walking, you need to focus. You need to put a lot of focus on that. So hopefully you don't trip, you don't fall. So not having to do that, I was like, wow, this is really cool. I am in a walker. At the time I was in a walker, and I felt more handicapped, if that's a thing, and it was one of those things that I accepted and I don't really care what other people think. It made my life so much easier. So anyway, I upgraded to then I had my brother, who passed away from ALD, he had a rollator, and his wife said, hey, do you want this? So she gave it to me, which is, a walker with 4 wheels. But that was even, it's literally almost life-changing. It's just made life better. But just going with the starting small, the mall, for instance, besides brought about the mall, I would not go to the mall just because of the while I can walk, all the walking in the mall, it would be the same thing. I'd have to slow down and think and and worry that I'm gonna trip and fall. And with the rollator, off I went, and I went to the mall. This is awesome, So then I decided, what, I'm going to go on a trip with my wheels, as I just call it my wheels. So I decided I was going to fly. It was just a one flight. I'm going to give some names I flew out of Baltimore, Washington, just for reference, just because my first thing was, which probably the only bad thing I think of the trip, was that there was a parking garage shuttle. Like, you can't park right at the airport, so you have to park away and then you take a shuttle. And the shuttle was not very accessible at all. Like, there was nowhere to put my rollator other than like in front of me. And then you got people trying to get around you. And it was just the whole thing. But I just sat there and like, I let the people figure it out. But other than that, it was like whatever. But again, I got off of that, and just walking through the airport was just so easy, just because again, I didn't need to focus on anything other than keeping my feet moving and going where I need to go. The TSA in that instance was fairly easy. You know, they didn't really, I felt like they treated me fairly like a normal passenger. They asked me if I could stand up, and I said yes. So I went through the regular scanner. You know, they took my wheelchair around, and then when I came back out, there was my wheelchair, and off I went. Being fairly new, I thought I knew the process because I did do some research. I had went to the gate and just said, hey, I need to gate check this. They gave me a gate check tag, and there we go. And I'm going to name an airline too, just because, you know, in this particular instance, this is where pre-boarding really would have came in handy, and something they did not do, and something I never thought about and didn't know, that, you know, filing this complaint, how Southwest Airlines works. You have to line up to board. Like, they have you get in line to this number, and then you go. Well, I was trying to get into the line, but the way that the line was next to the window, nobody could get around with me. They couldn't get around me, and you know, people they have to get in the exact order. People follow directions, and I eventually just got frustrated. I just pulled off to the side and like, just go, and I just like slipped in. Like, now that I would have known that. But once I did get that, then I go down, park the rollator, and I could watch out the window. I saw the gate agent take it. They loaded it up, and then when I got to my destination, I walk out, and there it was, and off I went. And like, it was just like, it was easier than I thought it would be. I would be honest, I was quite apprehensive. On the return, though, that woman did give me pre-boarding, and kind of going with the tag. I mean, that was specifically Southwest Airlines. That woman at that airport said that someone should have inspected it, I guess, and put a tag on it. And I said, well, they didn't do it when I left Baltimore. And she's like, well, no, they had to. I'm like, well, they didn't. But it was this whole thing. But this lady, she took care of it. But it was so something to keep in mind, I guess, if no one says anything, you should have some type of tag. So again, Katie's guide mentions that. But yeah, like, and then, you know, then I got back, and then back on the shuttle bus, it wasn't as busy, and you know, off I went. But like I said, that was only one trip that I did, but you know, I plan to do many more, and just to see how it goes. But again, even just talking today, and even from Katie's guide, you know, I'm learning more as it is, and it's just in general, just get out there and go, and do what you can while you got it, and you know, and transition, adapt, adjust, you know, but keep going. So thanks.
I love it. Thanks so much, Ken.
Yeah.
I just wanted to give my little 2 cents here about traveling while adrenally insufficient. I know that in our community we have it's been related. It's ended up in a couple folks' stories, but for many folks who are watching this, you may just have a child who is adrenally insufficient, or you may be that may just be one of your symptoms if you fall in another category. For me, I have always been, when my son was diagnosed, he was 5, and I have always been the drug mule of the family. I am the person who carries everyone else's hand luggage has fun stuff, snacks, exciting. Mom's luggage in our family, how it works out is that my hand luggage used to be, for years and years, all of the pills mapped out by day, plus extra in case something happened and that we might be delayed a few days. You know, emergency cortisone, just throw an extra bottle in. I also would have, like Elissa said, laminated plans, not only what what his pills are, because God forbid something happened to me along the way. I need to make sure that somebody else knows what are his daily doses and times, similar that I would leave for a babysitter or a family member or a sleepover or anything, knowing that kids are going to be kids. Also, in terms of adrenal insufficiency, I would bring Solu-Cortef, and I would bring, I think this is important, bring extra syringes. The worst thing that can happen to you, and I don't know if this has ever happened to anyone, but your child is in crisis, you stick the needle in, you're a little frenetic, you bend the needle because you're trying to get it through the rubber stopper, if anyone's familiar with Solu-Cortef and how it runs. You've got to press the liquid into the shelf stable powder, and then you draw down. And so it's a thick stopper, and to get through that, sometimes the needles do not make it. And so the worst thing would be to have to pull it out and attempt to straighten a needle with your hands. That is not sanitary. So I always say, bring, if you only have one dose, to bring one dose, but if possible, bring two, and make sure that you know that you've ordered it from your pharmacy ahead of time, because I cannot say that I have always done that. And I'd be the night before our trip out of the country begging, trying to drive around to different pharmacies to see who had it in stock and who would let me have it. Also, I would bring a provider letter. It's one piece of paper to remind people why you're traveling with syringes. I've never had a problem with that, but why are you traveling with all of this? Again, it also can help if you get somewhere and have a medical crisis at your destination. I have gone into ERs and have people said, "Oh, thanks, Mom. You can't say he's adrenally insufficient. We'll just take it from here." I would prefer to say no, and here's the letter to back up. This is what he needs. He needs an IV and he needs cortisone. And then finally, I would also suggest knowing your destination. And the one link I'm going to recommend to everyone is AI United, is Adrenal Insufficiency United. Right now, their current website, AIUnited.org, is coming. But right now, their current website is united4rare.org. And on that, if you look up emergency protocols, you can find a map of certainly of the United States, and I believe beyond North and South. I'm sorry to folks watching this in other countries, but they have a key, and you can find out what the protocols are by state. And some states, like I hail from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, every single ambulance in the Commonwealth has to have Solu-Cortef on board, and they're authorized to give it. There are many states, all of New England and sprinkled around. There are other states where if you have meds, they're authorized to give it. There are other states where it's only by county. So again, if you know where you're going, you can look ahead and find out what the protocols are. I'm not saying don't travel with your emergency meds. I'm saying it's good to know where you're going, because who knows, it just gives you that extra level of comfort of knowing, what do the emergency personnel know about adrenal insufficiency, and what are they willing and able and authorized to do. I've heard lots of, on the internet, on social media, I've heard lots of horror stories of people saying, I gave it to the emergency personnel and they would not give the shot because it's not within their purview. They don't accept meds from other people. So again, it's just a matter of making sure that you're prepared and you've thought it through. And then best laid plans, hopefully it never comes to pass and you worried for nothing, but it doesn't mean you stay home. So I know we are 2 minutes over, which I think these presentations have been fabulous. We may have to do a follow-up. We may have to come back at some point and talk about questions and answers. But I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And I know that we had received some questions ahead of time. And I've got to say, this Rockstar panel already addressed an overwhelming majority of them. So if there's something else that you're wondering about, let us know. You know our names, you know our faces. We can help get ALD Connect is happy to try to help you get the answer. But again, I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to be here. I want to thank Katy for inspiring us by creating this amazing living document that we are so thrilled to share. And we're so grateful that she's allowing us to do that. And I mean, if this is, you know, the people coming out of grad programs for physical therapy, we are in good hands, ALD community, because she is really thinking about things. And I want to thank Laurie and Elissa and Ken and the ALD Connect staff and leadership who are running this from behind the scenes. But thank you all for being here. Anyone else have any last words? Because I don't need to have the last word. Any panelists? Unmute yourself. How impressed we are that Elissa's in her rolling office and getting stuff done at a parking lot. Well, again, I want to thank you all. Watch this, share it with your friends. It'll be on our YouTube channel. It'll be attached to the website. And inside it are all, if you can't get to a link or you need us to restate a link, by all means, reach out to ALD Connect through all of our social media platforms and or directly call, email, you name it. And we're happy to give you and give you the resources you need. So thank you so much for being here, and everyone have a wonderful night. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.